Oh, sorry, I just got to get rid of me. Hold on a sec. How do I do that? Okay, great. Great to see everybody. Thank you, Valerie, so much for, getting us started beautifully today and for your deeply helpful and inspiring and opening talk yesterday. Which I hope in some ways to pick up on to the best of my ability, but we'll see what I can do. I want to talk about the sixth ancestor, the sixth Chinese ancestor of Zen today, Wei Nung. By the way, am I audible? You hearing me okay? Yeah, okay. So yeah, I'm going to talk about Wei Nung. He lived from 638 to 713 CE, and he's a absolutely pivotal figure in the history of Zen. He is credited with really establishing the so-called sudden school of Zen, which all Zen that we have pretty much today derives from. So whether it's Vietnam, Korea, Japan, China, all the lineages trace themselves back to Wei Nung. He's a common, I think it's probably right to say that he's actually the last common ancestor, that from Wei Nung, the branches of lineages start to ramify. He is the sixth Chinese ancestor, meaning that he was the sixth master following from Bodhidharma. With Bodhidharma, then Eka or Weka, then Sosan, Sengtsan, then Daoshin, who actually Valerie talked about beautifully the last retreat she was with us, and then Hongren, and then Wei Nung. That's six figures, that sort of pioneering figures of sudden awakening, meaning that awakening is possible. Maybe, I don't know whether they would go as far as to say it can only happen in a sudden way. That anything that's gradual and cultivated in a gradual way somehow can't quite be the real thing, so to speak. So that we're going to maybe investigate that a little bit. I mean, right off the bat, I'll say there's something to be said for that, insofar as you can't go through the gateless gate gradually. You really can't. You can't gradually sort of switch from a self-based view to non-self experience. You actually can't do it gradually. There may be a lot of gradual preparation that's possible, gradual cultivation of conditions, but actually, I think when it happens, it's a shift. It's not a process. There may be a preparatory process, perhaps that's possible, and there certainly may be, what in Zen we call sort of post-awakening practice. That's also a process, definitely. And it's very important actually to not to get some idea that one flash of awakening and you're cooked. Not at all. It's just that one flash of awakening, then it's a different kind of practice that we can engage in, which is about gradually learning to live what we've seen. And that tends to happen through further openings, actually. And there's a real sort of danger in Western Zen that I think there is you can pick up of people thinking, you just sort of, you've had a kensho, you're done. It's absolute rubbish, not at all. And this is part of the things that Samba Zen is very emphatic about, really. Teachers and possible future potential teachers having to go on and on with the training, because to get it clearer, deeper and clearer is never ending. Simply it's never ending. And how lucky it is that it's never ending. How lucky that you don't have to put a stop to your learning. I mean, what a great thing. What a sad thing it would be if you did. We are creatures that apparently love learning. I've been trying to find the right Latin word, Homo sapiens, hominin that's wise or something like that, right? How, you could definitely quibble with that statement, I think, very, very easily. But anyway, so I thought maybe better to have homo and then a Latin word for learning. But actually there isn't a very good Latin word for learning, weirdly. There's a word, I've Googled around a bit, there's a word quaerens, which is something like seeking or learning. So that wouldn't be too bad. But it's a little bit of an obscure Latin word. I mean, even quite apart from the fact that it's Latin, even within Latin, it's a little bit of an odd word. So anyway, if anybody has any classicist out there has a great word for, you see what I'm looking for, homo learning, rather than homo wise, please let me know. Anyway, this process, because of Wei Neng, in a way, we're still, well, it's not just him, but because of some early factors in the history of this form of Buddhist practice, this form of awakening practice, you can't really but have noticed that, however new you are to Zen, that we do actually talk about this possibility. Zen has been talking about it for thousands of years. Humans can undergo this, essentially sort of shift in the way we experience this moment. And we can undergo it suddenly, and with long-term training, that shift can become, you could say, a bit more stable, a bit more integrated into the way we live, and will reorient us in life. Now, I want to talk first to actually the pros and cons just of that. Is it a good thing to be sort of naming awakening and kensho? And what about there are some obvious downsides. One downside right off the bat is that it may be an encouragement to not do what I keep talking about in meditation guidance, which is let it be as it is. Because if you've got this guy or sometimes woman talking at you about this thing called kensho, you might do the reverse of letting things be as they are and get this idea, I've got to get this thing called kensho. I've got to have this awakening experience. It's a real risk, to get the mind, gaining mind, and I'm insufficient as I am. That's going to play into a whole lot of psychology for many of us, being insufficient, being inadequate. Here's another way I'm inadequate. I was just feeling good about having developed a practice. So happy to be doing this great thing for myself. And, you know, it's all about just being. I listen to the teacher and he's saying, just be. It's okay just to be just as you are. And then I hear this damn thing, Kensho. No, I can't just be as I am. There's something I've got to attain. Well, what a drag. What an absolute downer. It just ruins the whole thing, really. I was so happy being told, you're okay as you are. You're sufficient, complete. You're whole. You know, you're just, there's nothing more is needed. That's the root of mindfulness, is let it be as it is. You know, sometimes, we don't feel so good. Let it be that way. Don't think you're insufficient for not feeling so good. Great, I'm developing this loving heart of self-compassion, and helps me have more compassion for others. And then he drops this brick, Kensho. You're not enough. You've got to have this special thing, Kensho. Okay, so we've got to somehow lay that to rest. And why the hell bring it up anyway? Okay, so first of all, I want to say why, in a way, it must be right to bring it up. Or at least, perhaps it's right to bring it up. And that is, I think, in the end, the most compelling reason is simply that it is true. It's real. It's a more real experience of this moment. I think that may in the end be the most compelling reason that Zen has perpetuated its habit of talking about it for millennia. And by the way, so has Buddhism generally. The Buddha way is the awakened way. It's right there in the basic word Buddha, awakening. Of course, that word gets interpreted in different ways. And of course, you know, on some level, you might argue that there are different levels of awakening, that even just to be able to sit still and not be so identified with my thoughts, that is a kind of awakening from a conditioned identification with thought. I mean, that isn't an implausible definition by any means. It is not one that Zen, I think the Zen tradition would agree with, because it would consider that as part of our practice toward really, frankly, a deeper meaning of the word, which is essentially, you know, when it comes down to it, perhaps it has two essential characteristics. One is simply waking up out of the dream of being me, finding that the part of this whole experience called my life that feels like being me, there's a way in which it's simply being illusory. That this me, I've been very convinced in and by and of, is simply an idea. It's no more than an idea. And it is quite possible for that idea to just evaporate. It has never been more substantial than essentially a thought. That's quite a remarkable thing for most of us to experience, because it's such a deeply ingrained thought, presupposition, assumption. You know, how substantial is a thought? We're not denying that they arise, but how substantial is a thought? I mean, not very, right? Not very. And yet how entrancing a thought can be. I do think this analogy of a reflection on water is perhaps appropriate. You know, you're looking at a pond on a clear, calm day, and there's a tree on the far bank, perfectly reflected. It looks, it may be upside down, but it looks very real. And yet, how substantial is that reflection? You know, of course, I'm not a physicist. I don't know. I assume that light wouldn't even penetrate to the depth of one molecule, the reflection. It would be thinner than an atom. The reflection would be so thin, it's not even the thickness of an atom. Perhaps it's not even the thickness of an electron. It's so thin. I mean, it's so thin that it's sort of basically not there, but it is there. You see it. But you throw a little pebble out and plop, and the reality of it is gone. It's here. I mean, the sense of reality it carried is gone. That's one side of this. Another side of it, intimately related, is the discovery that, you know, our sense of everything else not being me, that comes with the sense of me being me, everything else is not me, that too has been an illusion, that there is a more real experience of this moment where I am not just inseparable from all. It's not quite enough to say inseparable. I mean, it's okay, it's going the right way, but it's actually, you know, this is why it's not a gradual thing. You don't get closer and closer. You just, the illusion's gone, and then you see there's one reality. And that's what I am. So it's not that we migrate our first identity, or sort of do I mean first, our prior sense of who I am. We don't sort of migrate that onto all else. It's more that's gone. Then we see a single whole. Exactly what Valerie was talking about. One bright pearl. One treasury. Now, that's not also to deny that this one treasury is capable of being 5 separate fingers, you know, 2 separate hands, 75 bodies, 7 million bodies, 7 billion bodies, 7.8 billion bodies. You know, it can do all of this, and yet there's never ceases to be this sort of level on which it's one. Okay, and this is real. And, you know, in a sense, when I say real, I think the standard of real only has to be that it's a bit more real than the ordinary way of perceiving. We don't really have to establish that it's real in some provable, fundamental way, although personally I think it is, but you only have to establish that it's more real than the way we normally experience it in order for it to be valuable. Do you see what I mean? That makes sense, right? I think logically, the standard is only that it be more real. And it is, and when you experience it, you know it without doubt. Now, so there's that factor. The other factor in favor, is what it actually pragmatically tends to do to us, which is, in a nutshell, I don't know, I might be wrong about this, but I suspect that you can't really discover this more real level of this moment without it really seriously affecting your heart. I don't think you can. I think it's very, very common that, you know, you just melted. You know, the defended separateness is just gone. It was completely pointless. You know, completely pointless from the start. And that's incredibly heart melting, and and then as we practice more, we're learning to, how do I live from what I've seen about my intimacy with all things? How do I live it? Well, that's why we go on training. That's why we do literally hundreds of koans in a long-term koan training. Or if we're not doing koans, we're just sitting. We're just melting and dissolving more and more and more, and learning more and more to get up off the cushion and be guided by what we've discovered, so that we become ever more sort of, in a way, almost unthinking. Well, I was going to use the word bodhisattva, but I think that's a grand claim, but just trying to act more kindly. And it sort of can happen with less effort. I think people do really find this, that the priorities can shift. It's not overnight for most of us. I have heard of it being overnight for some, but generally it's a process, you know. But it's a surefire thing. It really seems to work. And I mean, you heard the most beautiful description, I thought, from Valerie yesterday. She's you know, somehow, you know, a real sort of clarification, further clarification. Nobody here, nobody, you know, this experience Valerie was referencing, you know, and no body, and yet she steps into the shower, and suddenly all the suffering in the world is just, may I say, intimate. It's intimate. And there is in this awakened condition, so to speak, the compassion is here to meet it. It's one and the same almost. I think Valerie was talking about this, you know, hyphen, suffering, compassion, and then saying you shouldn't even have a hyphen, one word, suffering, compassion. You know, love, hurt, I mean, pain, love, I don't know. It reminded me actually of Bernie Glassman, you know, the great contemporary master who is very, actually he was trained in a lineage that's a sub-lineage sort of from our lineage, very, very, very close. And he, in the same method actually, but he, you know, after various kinds of experience, he had one where it wasn't so much sort of experience of you know, empty oneness. It was an experience that the whole universe was filled with hungry ghosts, with suffering beings, and his heart just filled with compassion, pain and compassion. And I think the rest of his Zen life was devoted to feeding homeless, hungry people. You know, set up the bakery and did a lot of street retreats. And his, you know, his whole orientation, I mean, it's almost an archetypal sort of Zen story, how he how he went from, the troubled Jewish guy, to the awakened master, to the bodhisattva servant, trying to feed people. Now, okay, you get the point. That's justification number 2, is that it tends to lead to a more open heart, more inclined to serve the suffering of the world, less concerned generally with the clamorings of an isolated individual self. Okay, those are the 2 justifications I'm offering today. Take them as you will. Now, a little bit on Wei Nung. He's this important guy. He was from an impoverished household. He was of an ethnic minority in China. He was an orphan, except his mum was alive. His dad, I'm not sure what happened to his dad. Not around. As a youth, he was supporting the household of himself and his mum by gathering firewood and delivering it to customers. One day, at about the age of 18, he delivered a load of firewood to a customer who was a storekeeper, and having unloaded it, stacked it, he was in the front room, and he heard some chanting going on in the back room. And one line just sort of jumped out, which was this: dwelling nowhere, mind comes forth. Dwelling nowhere, mind comes forth. Okay. Actually, this is a line from the Diamond Suture. And it's also a koan that we study, we sit with in our first book of koans called the Miscellaneous Koans. Dwelling nowhere, mind comes forth. The young Wei Nung heard this, and bam, he awakened. Somehow, this little verbal formulation, koan style, it got in. It just sort of wriggled into his heart. I don't know, it just pierced. It was a ray. Suddenly, the words, this is the weird thing about koans, that, and it's not magical, please don't get me wrong, it's just real. It's just one awakened statement. In other words, a statement of an awakened person can somehow just latch like a key into the latch in us, just in the same way. I mean, it's random, it's not predictable, it's not something to cultivate. It just happens when it happens, and boom, it just opened him. Dwelling nowhere, mind comes forth. So I'm going to come back to this and finish the talk shortly, but just the story is that Wei Nung heard this, awakened, and said to the customer, "What's that line?" And the customer said, "Well, it's a line from the Diamond Suture." "Who's saying it?" "Well, it's a monk in the back room who's visiting from a monastery." And Wei Nung said, "Well, where's the monastery?" The monastery actually was some distance away. But he thought, I got to get there. I've got to go there. I have to go there. But he's looking after his mum, and he can't possibly deliver enough loads of firewood to create a little, enough of a, what do I want to say, like a buffer that he could leave her for a while, a little, what I'm looking for, like just a little buffer so he can go for a while. Can't possibly do it. It just couldn't be done. The pennies he earns just won't make it. And so he's, what on earth should I do? Well, in one of these fairy tale elements, perhaps, I can't exactly remember the details, and by the way, there are different versions of this story, but somehow he goes home, and I think it's something like in a boot outside the front door or something, 3 silver coins have magically appeared. Now I don't, I don't know how you take that. It reminds me of Bach. The story about Bach walking to Denmark to study as a youth, same age. He's got to study with the great organist at the time, Dietrich Buxtehude. He was the god of the organ, the keyboard. And Bach's just got to study with him. He's a genius, but he knows he's got to go and get this training. So he's going to walk to Buxtehude, 30 days walk away or something. By the way, isn't it interesting? Who's heard of Buxtehude today? He's a footnote in life. He's a great guy, actually. I happen to love Buxtehude, but you can hear his influence on Bach all through Bach's work. Very beautiful. But Bach is the genius. Anyway, so Bach is walking and he's dying of, his boot soles disintegrate and his foot's sore and he's starving and he thinks he's going to have to give up the journey. He can't possibly go. And he's begging for scraps at the back of restaurants. And one day, somebody in the restaurant kitchen chucks out a fish's head. And he's hungry enough that he falls on it, wanting to eat it. And he's sort of, I don't know, chewing and tearing it up, and out drops a gold coin. With some fairy tale magic is put in there, But these stories, actually, they have a point. They have a real point. I sincerely feel that when we actually set our hearts on a true, good goal, on a really deeply valuable goal, not on the, sort of I want to be famous, not that kind of goal. Deep human heart goal of I want to sort of, I want to find who I am. I want to most fully be what I am made to be, or something like that. There's got a humility in it and a real sincere, wholesome wish. I think it's not altogether fanciful to think that sometimes support seems to come in unexpected ways. I really think that can be true. And very often, the support that we most need in things, in life generally, is not the support that we know about and are trying to get. You know what I mean? I don't know how many of you have had this phenomenon with projects. You think you know the next thing you really need. And you're sort of trying to somehow bring that about. I mean, this happened to me a lot as a writer. I was sure this editor had to be the one who I got to get my work on their desk, and somehow it sort of doesn't ever work out. And then all of a sudden, from completely the opposite direction, something else opens up. So we just don't know where our help is really coming from. So these stories have that value. Anyway, Wei Nun gets his 3 silver coins. He stocks up his mum's larder. He prepares everything that she might possibly need and organizes help while he's gone so he can go. And he goes, and it's a 30-day walk. And he gets to the monastery of Hongren. Master Hongren is the 5th Chinese ancestor. And he arrives there, and he has this little dialogue that I'm just going to read to you. He says, the master asks him, "Where are you from? What exactly do you hope to get from me by coming to this mountain to pay your respects?" I answered, this is Wei Nun, "Your disciple is from Lingnan. I'm a commoner. The reason I came all this way to pay my respects is I want to be a Buddha. I don't want anything else." The master scoffed but you're from Lingnan. I don't know what the connotations of Lingnan exactly are, but obviously didn't rank high in Hongren's view. And you're a jungle rat as well. You know, I told you it's an ethnic minority. It's a pejorative term of some kind. How can you possibly become a Buddha? You know, you're from Lingnan and you're a minority. What a response, actually. Really. Anyway, look at this, how he replies. People come from the north or the south, not Buddha nature. Buddha nature knows no north and south. The lives of this jungle rat and you, master, may not be the same, but how can our Buddha nature be different? That's somebody speaking with the confidence of having had a real taste of this more real reality, more real experience of this moment. Now, coming back to what Wei Nung heard, dwelling nowhere. Dwelling nowhere. This moment, this room, sounds, sights, walls, I don't know, maybe you're on a patio, leaves, shade, wall, fence, chair, table, floor, rug, water bottle, computer, tablet, iPhone, dwelling nowhere. This experience, you know, world, town, street, town, world, universe, where is it? Where is it? How could this outrageous statement be made? It's nowhere. From this revered Mahayana Buddhist sutra. Someone speaking from their awakening. It's nowhere, yet mind comes forth. This. Just this, exactly as it is. It is therefore, as you often hear me say, infinite gift, infinite generosity, because it's nowhere, yet this, nowhere, but this, nowhere, 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 and this. Somehow, this got through to Wei Nung. Somehow, the self that creates the sort of floor of our experience, the sort of foundational assumptions, somehow just disappeared. And he saw just one arising. And what's behind it? Simply nothing. Simply the arising. Just this arising. Just this coming forth. No foundation. No source. No origin. No, actually, no causal condition. Just this. It just got him. It just got him. What a set of circumstances, you know, just got him. And here we are. This is how it functions. Here we are still sort of honoring, you could say, the same fact. I mean, there's nothing to honor, but we're still opening to it, you know. How amazing that we're prepared to spend our days sitting, of course, for, you know, more sort of various levels of benefit that we rightly hope to come from our sitting, absolutely rightly. But we're doing it immersed, you know, right now in this context of a certain, you know, stream of the Buddhist way, the Buddha way, the awakening way, the Zen way, which, you know, believes, rightly or wrongly, there's quite emphatic about, or quite clear on, this real fact of how things really are, or more really are, and what the consequences sort of are if we open to it. If we just as it's just a matter of letting go. It's not a matter of getting anything, just letting go. And so, you know, in comes the Dharma Sutra line, and that's what happens. Wei Ning's woven fabric of the sort of supposed floor he thinks he's walking on, that woven fabric it's just gone. It's not even really that it disintegrates, it's just gone. Disintegration implies there's a sort of process of it going. No, it's seen that it was never there. Okay, so there's much more to this story. Maybe future talks will just go a little bit further down the road with Wei Ning. Okay, thank you very much indeed. And please, don't be seeking. Don't be seeking. Just don't be seeking. If seeking comes up, that's what's coming up. Welcome it. When you welcome it, you don't sort of obey it. You know what I mean? You get one step outside it. You hold it without, you give it a context, but you're not driven by it. So seeking is welcome, as long as it's really welcome. You know, if we're being driven by it, no. There's nothing to find at all. It's this. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.